All right, Joy and Nat, congratulations on your recent Oscar nomination for Best Film Editing for the film Moonlight. How did it feel when you got the news you had been nominated?
Really, really surreal.
I mean,
we've all, between myself and Joy and the director Barry, cinematographer James, we've all known each other since we were 19 years old. And, it's all of our first times for this happening. And to go through it with these people who, you have these memories going back almost 20 years. It's been really, really special, really surreal. Yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Joy, I'm sure I'm not the first person who's pointed this out to you, but you are the very first African-American woman nominated in this category. So when you started editing this film, did you realize you were going to be such a trailblazer?
Definitely. She was telling that to us from the very beginning. Yeah.
I have them refer to me as trailblazer early on. No, I think for all of us, since we've been friends for so long and knowing each other since college, we just basically, our goal was to do Barry proud and get this film into Telluride. So I don't think we had any idea that this was going to happen.
Well, one of the extraordinary things about this movie is that it is like the little movie that could.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that when you took this on, none of you were expecting it to have this broad of an appeal. Did you have some sense, though, that it was going to connect to audiences in some profound way?
I definitely think so. I also feel like Barry's take on this world and these characters, he was doing it in a very refreshing way. And I think he presented these characters not like being Black and poor, but being Americans. And I think it was the way he told the story that it made it feel like a universal story and not just for one specific, type of person.
But that said, I mean, Barry hadn't made a movie in 8 years, and he was nervous, and he knew for him there was a lot riding on this film, and so in the edit room, he was nervous, and I don't know about you, but he made me nervous then, and so it really wasn't until the first time that we showed outside people, and the screening just it could not have gone better, and that was the first moment where we realized, oh, we might really have something here, at least for me.
Well, congratulations again. Let's talk about editing the film. It's got this unique 3-act structure in that you're seeing glimpses of this character Chiron's life as both a child, as a teenager, and as a young adult man. What are some of the challenges editorially that a structure like that presents for the two of you?
Sure. I mean, aside from, for the characters, I wish we could take more credit for the continuity of performance between the 3 actors, but that really was between Barry and the script and the actors. It really was just kind of there in the footage. And we didn't really have to do an extra pass to say, okay, let's make sure that, this actor was doing this kind of facial thing. We can do that with the other ones, blah, blah. But the biggest challenge with that structure was it's really kind of more of an observational film than one really driven by plot and, one thing cause and effect and one thing leading to the next. So the biggest challenge was maintaining Barry's filmmaking voice, which was observational and ponderous, and always wanting to preserve that, but still needing to keep things moving and to, not necessarily have maybe a 2.5-hour European version of the movie, but to have something that still really moved and kept the audience engaged, but still preserved his voice.
Well, it's also such an immersive experience in the way that it's shot and directed. Your role in creating that kind of immersive experiences, what were some of the techniques that you used to really put the audience into the mind of this character and show the world from his perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, you're talking.
No, that was one of the big takeaways we had an early screening for the producers, and they weren't throwing any parades for us just yet. We hadn't 100% found the movie just yet, and the big takeaway was that we really needed to filter the movie through Chiron's perspective and to really feel everything through him. And so we went back and did just like a full pass of really filtering it through him. And then there was a good amount of sound design work that we did. Definitely in the second act, maybe some of the third as well. But
because we definitely played with a lot of techniques of, like when Chiron in Act 2 is, towards the end of that act when he gets beat up. there was just something. I remember when Barry and Nat were working on that section and they had the sound cut out, and I was like, that is so awesome, because it's in that moment, you know, I felt like you were connecting with Chiron and what he was experiencing. And I feel like sometimes when people cut the sound out, it makes what's happening on the screen feel even more graphic. And so I think that was another point where you guys did, where I felt like you really connected with Chiron. And then a lot of, you know, the takes that we did where we cut it to slow motion, I felt like was, you know, grabbing the audience and putting them into his perspective and making these moments feel more impactful by like slowing it down and taking the sound out.
Yeah, like near the end of the second act, there's a scene right after he's gotten beat up where he's in the principal's office. And we had that playing just as a normal full dialogue scene. And actually Ryan Coogler came to a feedback screening and he gave a note that kind of led us down the path of really, with sound, really making that Chiron's perspective where he's you know, blocking her out. He's not really hearing what she has to say. And so that was another example where we went really immersive with sound.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up that scene too, because it feeds into one of the other great qualities of the movie, which is those close-ups. And I don't remember seeing the teacher at all in that sequence in the times that I've seen the movie. But yeah, I mean,
hopefully she's okay with that.
But I mean, it works in an artistic way, you know, in really putting you, I mean, being that close on a character consistently. I mean, it creates a sense of empathy for that character.
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we lost you for a second.
Yeah, we couldn't hear your question.
Oh, I was just saying that, I mean, it creates such a sense of empathy for the character. You know, and it's a hard thing to do in a movie that is so specific as this one is, you know, about what it's like to grow up poor, black, gay, to allow any kind of person to empathize with and see the world from that perspective, you know, so that there's this feeling of universality to his experience that's really extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that, in some ways, it's a challenge when you have a character who's so withdrawn and internal and doesn't speak much. But in those ways, I think it kind of became a strength where it was really the movement of his eyes and just seeing those expressions on his face, which really allowed us, we just really highlighted that and really made that the thing that was going to draw you in.
Yeah.
Now, within these three sections of the film, was there an effort to give each segment its own distinct editorial style, or were you just trying to make it as a whole, you know, consistent throughout?
What do you think?
It's funny because I feel like when we started editing this, we were each taking on different scenes, but I think because both of us have worked with Barry previously, I think we both knew how Barry usually likes to approach his films and his cinematic style. And so we just applied that to the way we were editing. And so we put everything together, it kind of just naturally felt, you know, as a whole, I think.
Yeah. I think we were definitely more so going for a whole as opposed to differentiating.
Yeah.
We didn't want the editing to be the thing that you would notice as far as differentiating the three acts.
Right. You guys mentioned that you've known each other since you were teenagers. Take us back to those early days of getting of getting to know each other, and what those formative years were like, and how they influenced the way that you work on a film like this.
It's funny because I was in the same class as Barry and James, and so I worked with Barry on 2 of his projects, and I just remember, and James was his DP on these projects, and I just remember at the time I was his production designer, and I just remember bringing stuff to him and James, and they would have little conversations and be like, yeah, that works. And so to see them now, it's like nothing's changed. They're still very much the same, and they're very inclusive in their collaboration, and they want everyone who's working on these projects to be involved and help to, make the best, end product possible. But they're also very, I wouldn't say it's a little stubborn. And if they want to have something a certain way, they're going to achieve that. I remember one time in the dailies, I got a clip that had basically the light was like flickering. And so I like told Nat, I'm like, oh my gosh, this shot's flickering. And then I called up James. I'm like, hey, I think you guys might have to reshoot this section. And it's when teenage Chiron is like putting his face in the ice bath and he pulls up in front of the mirror and the light's flickering. I'm like, yeah, there's a flicker in the light. And James is like, oh no, that's intentional. We actually spent hours trying to get that done. I was like, oh, I should have known. Yeah, it's definitely Barry and James.
Yeah, and for me, I was a class ahead of them, so I wasn't able to work with them in school really collaborate with them in school. But I knew early on in school that editing was what I wanted to do, and so I was always hanging out in the post-production hallway. And I remember on a couple different of Barry's projects, I was sitting with him, and he was probably sitting with me on mine, and I think we both like really making bold, interesting choices in our stuff. And so I remember always pushing him to, and he was pushing me to, I remember one short he made, we decided that we weren't going to show the second, it was just two characters talking, we decided we weren't going to show the second character a single time, and just, I'm sure it probably wasn't any of our best work, but yeah, but those bold choices, which are still going now, like he always is pushing us to be more bold, to make more kind of avant-garde, interesting, bolder choices with our editing. So you'll see stuff where, we'll cut a scene off with music playing underneath it, we'll just cut it off on a dime, lot of choices like that kind of started early on.
Right, absolutely. So take us a bit more through the process of putting the film together, and how many passes did you have to do it at, within the editorial process? I'm losing my train of thought here.
No, I know what you're saying.
But you know what I mean, like the process of finessing a movie and shaping it until it becomes what we see in front of us.
Yeah, it was 5 months in total of editing from the first day of us cutting to picture locking, and so we showed Barry our first cut after about a month and a half of editing. He watched it. We did his pass for 3 or 4 weeks, and then we showed the producers. And still through that point, it was still finding its way. We got the producers' notes. We made that change to really shift everything to Chiron's perspective. And after working on their cut, so I would say about 2.5 to 3 months in was when we did that first friends and family screening, where people really just were telling us, no notes, you could change this or that, but really you could or you couldn't do it, but everything's really working. So we had a short stretch between when we first showed it to Barry and that screening when we were still finding our way, but from that, the last month and a half or 2 months were really just fine tuning, because it was already really starting to work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the film has had such a remarkable run since it premiered at Telluride, and I mean, with these 8 Oscar nominations and people seeking the film out even before then, but certainly now people are lining up to see it. Why do you think the film has had such an impact on people?
I would say there's moments in this movie that I feel like across the board people can identify with. Like, we've all felt like an outsider, and we've all felt excluded. And I feel like the takeaway from this movie is that, even though you do have dark times, there is light, or moonlight,
No, you didn't just say that.
I did. But there's a love and there's a tenderness that's in this movie, that's sprinkled throughout, that I feel like gives people hope, and it makes them see that, you may be going through a rough time, but there are people out there who want to love you. And so I think what people are responding to is the isolation, but also, I guess, the takeaway that there is hope.
Yeah, and I think just seeing something, it was just, for so many people, they've said, I've never seen a movie like that before. It felt so unique. I think just the combination of, sometimes even just Barry as a person, his combination of how he grew up, and then, what he's influenced by between European and Asian filmmakers. And I think it's just seeing that world done in a way where people haven't seen it before, and it's just really refreshing. And hopefully it opens the doors for a lot of other filmmakers to be able to tell their stories in a similar way, and get the same respect and space that Barry did for his.
Yeah. I think it's also like I feel like a lot of people who may be watching this movie have never experienced this world before, but they may have like driven by it. And so now, like, you know, like they've driven through it. And now I think seeing this movie, they're like, oh, what I've, you know, just perceived as, you know, being a certain type of way, now Barry has made these characters visible and have given them a voice that now people are like paying attention to. And it was like, oh, next time when I drive through, you know, I shouldn't just assume I'm seeing one type of light, you know, like there is, you know, there's heart and there's humanity in these worlds that I think people have probably not attributed that to them before, you know.
Absolutely. Well, it's an extraordinary movie, and congratulations on it. And I can't wait to see what your team does next.
Thank you.
That's great.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.